Hello and welcome back to episode 9. So we're rattling on for this 10 episode series, but there's going to be a bonus episode 11 for this one that will round this off, as we mentioned before. And straight off we've got the progress on the large 109 that's from Edward. This is a 1/32 scale E series. This is actually an E3. And you join me here just as I'm putting the panel lines back in. So the airframe's pretty much done now, everything's all together. I'm pretty happy with seam lines all over. I've checked a few areas. I've just reapplied a small amount of plastic putty from Deluxe Materials just in and around the windscreen where there was a few small gaps. I still want a sort of impression there, but I don't want a great hole, which is what I had. Now the seam that I've got to do lastly is this one here. And this causes a few problems. Obviously it's a great big line I've got to do straight down the centre, so lining that up takes a bit of time. But due to the problem with this kit, where we've got the lines running across for each panel, there's misalignment. I can assure you that the fuselage is correct, it's just obviously slipped somewhere in the mould, I guess, because it can't be off because the wing's on and everything. So that's going to take a little bit of just manipulating to make sure that all comes through. And I thought it was worth showing you how I would go about masking, how I would go about scribing this. So I've got a roll of high Q tape here. This is what this plastic stuff is. We'll show you that in a minute. Now the problem with that stuff is it is widely regarded as being quite good, but I find it doesn't stick more than once unless you use a piece of tape. So this is how I get around it, just with a piece of, like, this is cheap version of Tamiya tape, which is not quite long enough. That's because I got it too far. So I've just cut a clean edge at the front here, and then you line up where you want it to go, which is easier said than done, especially on camera. So if we just say there for argument's sake, and then we need to go back to where that tail wheel well is, then I would, to line it up, I'd probably hold it here and then loosen it there, and then start trying to, ideally if you've got a little bit of the seam still showing, that's the best way to sort of realise if you're anywhere near the centre, and there is a faint hint of it there, so I'm just kind of lining everything back up again. And as usual you've got a few pointers, so the end of the tail wheel well, actually obviously that's the very point of that is where the line wants to be. We've also got this rib here, so your scriber wants to just end at the, well, just, it's the line before actually, it doesn't go as far as that, but just wants to be in the centre there, and I can just see it's a little bit off. Now don't worry if you're holding your breath, I'm not going to scribe this on camera. I'm not that brave or stupid, whichever may be the case. I'm just showing you how I would line it up and then what the process would be. Because this is always a tricky seam, especially on something this big. If there's a 1/72 109, I mean, you know, as soon as it's lined up, it's easy, you just pull it through and it's done. So that's the sort of thing. Then I would check that, just looking down, and again, it's reasonably good. The fuselage sort of curves on a 109. It still needs to be a straight line, but you've got, there's a sort of curve in there. I'm not explaining myself very well, so I need to just reset that so the front of it is good. So if we go back something like that, and again, like I said, I'm not actually doing this on camera, so we won't worry too much. We'll see how that goes for the sake of this demonstration. That's pretty good there. So then this is how you get more use out of the high Q tape. Then you lay it down on top of the Tamiya tape. That then gives you the nice edge. You can see it's already peeling up. This is the trouble with it. People say it's great stuff. I beg to differ. I've got to be honest. It's no different to Dymo tape, in my personal opinion. But there you go. Each to their own. And there we go. So you get it on, and then you want to make sure it's really down there. And as you can see, it's rolling up at the end. This is what always happens with this stuff. It's not the best, but I've got it, so you know, I need to use it up. Then you would go in with your trusty scriber, and then from the point that you want to go, you rest up against that edge. It's not actually straight up to the edge of the tape here, but it would need to be. and then just drag it back through. Now on a seam like this, I would actually pull that long line all the way back first, then go on with the ones over. You could also line these up, which I would do using the end blade of this one. This is the trumpeter scriber, so I'd just sort of run through and meet them up like that and then drag back. Then you can actually do this line in sections, so you can just try and make sure each one between the two is straight and where you want it to be, for instance. So there's two ways of doing it. I've done it both ways, and there's merits to both. It's just this one I'm going to be doing in the one long line. So that's the next job there. Once that's done, this one can, again, final little check over the rest of the airframe, and then we can start getting the paint colours on. Now I'm sure many of you may have seen the video that went up on Sunday about the Boomerang update, but I need to mention it obviously on the weekly video as well for those who may not have seen it. And this is where we are. Really quite pleased with it actually. It's come on, as all of these projects tend to. All of a sudden it all sort of comes together and you're pretty much there. You can see we've got the white spots all over it. That's just a bit of plastic putty, again from the deluxe materials. Just where I've done some rescribing, and I'm a bit disappointed with either going out of the lines or I've got a few holes where it's sort of gone through the filler and all the rest of it. But a quick sandback of that, reset of the line, and obviously make sure you go down the correct channel to straighten it, and we're there. So the only things to do after that is add in some metal barrels into these wing guns here, actually scribe around the wing guns, which I may, I'm going to have to do, but I need to be a bit careful because I use super glue to weld those in. The underside is done. I'm happy with that. There's no problem there. And then we're ready to go. So I've sprayed up the undercarriage, and I've painted the silver hubs on the wheels, so I've just got to do the tyre black on those. Make sure all that fits. Get the colours on this. This is going to be white on the wing leading edges, white tail plane, and then it's foliage green and a sort of dark earth colour, so it's Aussie colours, and we'll be well away then, hopefully into the decals by next week, and get the weathering on, and this one should be ready and finished for the Telford deadline. And lastly, these are the projects that have been ongoing. This is the ICM Polycarp off. I thought we were actually quite far ahead on this one until I sprayed the black over. So this is the Tamiya lacquer range, and it's their LP3, which is the matte black. And that actually showed up, there's a bit of a seam running down here, so I'm just letting some sprue goo set up on that. I'm going to leave it another night and then just sand that back, and we should be well on the way then. So I'll spray the black, then I'm going to spray up the tail plane, I think, so the red horizontal stabilizers and vertical stabilizer. So I'll spray that white as well as the rudder, put the red and the yellow and the purple on the rudder at the same time, then mask all of this up, and then in between it actually runs through with the green colour. So we've got red wingtips, and on the underside the black goes back as far as here, and it's got a curved shape, so it's quite nice. I've actually got the scheme here. This is what we're going to be doing, something like that. So it's actually quite nice with that large black cowling there. There's the red on the tail, got the big red bands and the red wingtips, the Russian blue on, and then once we got all that done, I'm going to do it as reverse masking. So once all that's done, it's just a simple case of running over with the MRP version of the Russian blue, and then I'm going to mix an olive drab, probably out of Tamiya colours, because the one I did get the correct colour from MRP, but I'm not too happy with it. It doesn't look right to me. So I'll just mix up a sort of, I think it's the A2 green, if I remember rightly, but I might be wrong. But I do know it. I've got all the information. I've done one before. So we'll get that sorted, and we'll be well on the way with that one again. So there's not much work there at all to do. Just need to get a few small niggling little problems out of the way, and then we'll be well onto it. Now, after seeing my review of the MIG stuff on this series previously, a friend at my local club offered to lend me these to have a look through on the channel, so I'll be doing that. I thought we could have a quick flick through here and just see what they're about on this segment, and then actually do a standalone review of them, as it were, just have a bit of a flick through the pages and see what we're doing. So this is the Ammo Modelling Guides, and this is a how to paint with oils and how to paint with acrylics. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice here, it must be getting to me. There you go, see? I'm going to need to take an extended break after doing all of these videos, I think, and Telford, it might finish me off. So these are obviously very useful for using the ammo products, and they'll be built around using the ammo products. As you can see, there's quite a lot on here that are ammo products, but we've also got high quality oils being added in, and on here we've got Mr. Mark Setter, so it's not totally about ammo products. So let's have a look in the covers. So first off, fighting a bit of glare here, sorry, but first off we'll go have a look at the oil book. So as you can see, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's going to be going through the ins and outs of painting with oils, starting with figures there. So we've got the oil brushes, as well as a few other things going on. So you've got enamel odourless thinners and white spirit artist grade, and it's discussing all of the merits of those. Even talking about trying to get these caps off when they've been stuck on there from the oil paint, which I have many a time. Then we're going on with working materials, so describing about the stuff that you may need, brushes, etc. Primer base coat. So as you can see, it's quite in depth. It tells you all the way through what you're going to need to build models and then use oils, so it's getting you to that point at this stage. Again, sorry about this glare, I can't do a lot about it. There, hopefully that will help. And then we're running through, we're into the blending technique. So here's a dot filter being applied, so that's quite a good example of how to do that. I'm also doing it here on buildings as well. Gives you that staining effect. It's running down there. So very nice, very, very clear pictures. They're always renowned for this. And again, we've got more staining and streaking, dry brushing with oils, lighting and shading. So that's using like a filter. Similar on aircraft. It's mainly an armour technique, but it, it has its uses on aircraft as well. And then we'll go through, right, we'll skip ahead. So we've got stuff being done, dioramas. As you can see, it's absolutely jam-packed with information, even going down to the mud effects, oil and grease, bits of patina as well on areas, military vehicles, and so on. So we'll save a really in-depth dive into it for the actual review. So far, the oils book is looking very good. And I'm sure painting with acrylics is going to be very much the same thing. So again, the start of the book is telling you about what is acrylic. So going into the paint chemistry, running through different types of paint, showing you what the differences are, and there's enamels there coming in as well. Then talking about primers, getting on then into colour, as well as what airbrush and the different types of reasons and uses for airbrush pressure and all the sorts of things that are very interesting when it comes to things like this. Then we've got some modulation going on there, camouflage application, and using masks to create some fine lines and demarcation lines, sorry. Then we're on to aircraft, running through again. Then what we've got here, airbrush cleaning, so that's quite a deep dive again, using the Evolution, which I think they rebrand one of these, I think, something like that. They do have their own airbrush. And then this is quite useful, telling you the different problems you can get and the reasons behind them. So the cause and the solution. For spider's legs, splashes appear, irregular strokes, blur at the beginning, end of stroke, and so on. It's very, very useful stuff. It's quite in depth, this. Then we've got acrylics with brush, using a wet palette, and talking about brush painting in and around an armoured vehicle. In fact, this is actually brush painted, this entire vehicle, it looks like, even with the undercoat. Well, there you go. You don't see that very often. So for the brush painters out there, you don't get neglected. Then we're on to buildings as well, painting cockpits, painting figures, a bit more information on the figures, and different camouflage uniforms and everything that's going on there. And as you can see, it's again a very, very deep dive into everything you need to know, well, hopefully, loosely, about painting with acrylics, and ending there on metal paints. So look forward to some in-depth reviews on both these books coming to the channel soon. And now I can finally confirm there will be a jet coming to the channel. Finally. I know we've had odd jets, ME262 in the past and those sorts of things, but this is a real proper jet. And you won't be surprised, I know nothing about it other than it's French. But thankfully, I've got a couple of friends who are making sure that changes. So I'm going on a crash course with everything there is to know about the Mirage, including the person who I'm building this for. So this is another commission that's come in. And this is jam-packed with information. Actually got a CD-ROM in there. which you don't see these days so often these days, but it's very helpful. It's packed full of stuff. There's pictures of the aircraft he wants and all the rest of it, so very useful stuff. So it's quite nice to see this package, as it comes with an empty bag that the CD-ROM was in, and then we've got a whole bundle of decals that I think, after looking through, we can certainly make the aircraft that we're trying to, using a selection from all of these. So for those of you who know about such things, there is a set in here which is by a company called Carpina decals, Jean-Loup. So made in France, and that is the insignias for the actual aircraft. I think it's the tail insignia on this one. This is going to be in a desert scheme, which I didn't realise they were in the desert. I didn't know a lot about it in the first place, if I'm honest, so don't point me talking about what I did and didn't know, because it wasn't a very much. And I think we're going for one of these aircraft on here, so it's all very useful and interesting to see. Now, there's a number of interesting points on this, certainly from the channel point of view. We're going to be able to look at quite a few different things. Now, I do have a handful of commissions on the go. I'm not filming all of them necessarily as actual in-depth builds. I am going to try and do this one as that, because I think it's going to be quite special, because we've got a few sprues added in here to make up the different parts that the person wants from the build. But this is the Hella kit, so it's obviously quite an old kit. So there's a benefit there, looking at what we can do with extremely old kits. So we've got raised panel lines all over, and what we can do with the differences there. Me being new to jet, so I'm looking at this thinking, well, where's the fuselage? But I see that it's all in here, so it's pretty much that bit, and then there's a nose cone and the cockpit's on the front of it. Oh, it's all very different. I don't really know what I'm looking at. And there was a list of missiles that I was explaining to my friend. I didn't know what they were. So I still don't really know what they are, but I'm sure I'll know by the end of it. So we don't need to get into this project just yet. It's just arrived. But it is going to be along the channel through sort of November, December time. So as soon as I've got anything on the go with it, I'll let you know, and we can have a look at it. But yeah, it provides a number of challenges, none of which are anything like what the Boomerang's been like. It's just raised panel line. So for instance, how we're going to get around that, I'm going to have a thought about it. Already I've got a bit of leeway. I mean, I could either sand them back and leave them off, put them in, rescribe them. I could even sand them down a little bit, try and make a feature of them. There's all different ways I can go about this, so it's going to be very interesting, and I'm not going to know until I actually start getting the bits off the sprue on how it's going to look. I'm imagining the cockpit is going to be a little bit basic, but I don't know, but I imagine it is. So that's an area we can also look at as well. So hopefully, so I'm sure you'll agree this is going to be an interesting project to follow along. One that's very welcome on the channel, and it's the sort of thing we like to do. It fits right in. Again, although being a jet, there's nothing about the channel that says we don't build jets. It's just not something that sort of floats my boat. But this does look like a very attractive aircraft, very well known, very well loved. And being a French aircraft, it's got that sort of look and appeal to it. So there we go with the open plan instructions, very sort of old school. I should look this up. I imagine it's a kit from the 70s. That's what it sort of looks like. It doesn't look like it could even be 80s, because it just feels a little bit too old. But I don't know if they ever put printing numbers on the kits. Probably not, because it would date them, wouldn't it? Should be helpful in this case, but not if you're trying to resell an old kit. Well, this one must be after 1980s, because we've got a scheme here for 1984. So there we go. Whether this is the original kit or there's a release before that, I might be doing a disservice. Might not be quite as old as I think, but it's interesting nonetheless. And there we go. You can see a little bit of what we're going to be dealing with. Bit of a bolt-on cockpit scenario up there. And as with most of these things, this isn't really about a super detailed build. That's not what the customer's after. What we're looking at is just trying to get a finish. Seems to be what most people want, really. It's not always masses of detail. It's more getting the actual aircraft. That's what the interest is about. And I'm particularly impressed with this package just how much the person obviously likes the aircraft and has spent the time looking at it. So it should be a nice project to bring their want for this aircraft to a reality. So hopefully everyone will be happy at the end of it. So again, stay tuned for that one, and you'll know all about it once we start building it on the channel. And I've been on Creative Models again. I must stop looking every time that they put these weekly deals up. They're too tempting. So this week I picked up a couple of World War I aircraft. I'll actually get the other one because it's I've got a real theme of World War I aircraft on the go now. So we've got the Fokker D.VII, which is a profit pack. It wasn't massively cheap, but I thought I'd get it because it's a Fokker D.VII profit pack. It was around the sort of £15 mark. No, I was reasonably happy with that. So that's a nice one to build. I've done it in 1/72nd, so I'd like to have a go at it in 1/48. And before you worry, I'm actually aiming to do this scheme here. We're not doing the Red Baron. We're going to try some of the oil streaking. But again, I'm not promising any of this soon, but as soon as Telford's out of the way, I'm going to be freed up a lot. So, I mean, a build like this wouldn't take me too long at all. It'd be quite a nice sort of way of getting back into something and just concentrating on a single project like this. So that's quite nice. But the focus of this week is the Fokker D.VIII. Now, I'm not going to actually go straight into this in this episode. I was going to, but I think we've gone on long enough, so I think we're tight in around the sort of 20 to 25 minute mark. But this week I'll get a review for this one up for you. I'm actually mostly taken with this scheme, bizarrely. I'm sure a lot of you like the blue and yellow, but I really like the challenge of that. That's a one-piece decal running all the way through there. And with the white and the yellow, I just think it'd be really great. But the main feature of this one is the lozenge pattern decals again. And I'm itching to have a go at these, as you can probably tell by all of these World War I aircraft I keep showing. I mean, just look at that. Mesmerising it is. It's all printed very well. And we've got the two different colours for the top and the bottom. And then we've got the rib tapes. God dear. I'm not sure whether many people would actually look forward to that, but I certainly would. I think that would be a great challenge to try and get all of those lined up and on, and then what a fabulous finish you'd have at the end. And here for that scheme that I was talking about, so there's the decal that runs along the side. It's upside down, sorry, there you go. Runs along the side. Nice kit. Again, I don't think this one's brand new at all. I think it's a rebox of a slightly older mould, but nonetheless, simple enough kit in 1/48. Not masses of rigging, and looks pretty good. So if that's of interest, stay tuned to the channel and there'll be a review up with you later in the week. So there we go, that brings this week to an end. I hope there was plenty that you could take out of this week's show. There's a lot going on again. That Mirage again is going to be an exciting project. It's very much like the DH4 that I mentioned in the past. And actually, we've got a little update on that while we're at it, bringing it to an end. I managed to, at Yeovil show, which was a good show by the way, just been this weekend, I managed to pick up an early press of the, early mould of the DH4. So that's £5. It's about as much as I wanted to pay for it, but it's fine. We're basically just using the wings on this one and the rest of it, but just not using the fuselage. So when that project comes, you'll see the end of it, but that one's a long way off. But as I mentioned before, it's a very sort of exciting project for me that's going to tick along in the background. So again, all good stuff. So next week we're going to be right on the cusp of getting ready for Telford. So in that episode, hopefully we're going to have all of this sorted, so we can have a look at that, and we're going to then be finishing off some of those big models again that are having their second outing. So we'll get the Polycarp off from Azure, the 1/32 Polycarp off up on the bench, get the canopy fixed on that, do a bit of touch-ups here and there, and that one will be ready to go in the box. We will finish off the 109D that I've got up there because a friend of mine has sent me I've got it here, the bit that holds the canopy open. So there's a little bar there that just props the canopy open. So I've got two, one for this one that came in the kit and one that was kindly sent to me to sort out that one that I've got in the background. I think looking at the Stuka, I think we're pretty much done there, so that's good. So all in all, it's going to be a very jam-packed show. There'll be plenty coming up in the following week for that, and then on the build up to Telford and over Telford, I'm hoping that I should have some video builds going up. So obviously, if you're coming to the show, come say hello. You know where I am. Spanish Civil War Sig. Where else would I be? So that will be easy to find. But it looks like we're in Hall 1. Good spot, actually. better than last year. I didn't really enjoy being in Hall 3, so better to be right over the far end. That's where it's all happening. So, more on that next week, and until then, thanks for tuning in. Please do stay tuned to the channel. If you haven't already, consider subscribing. And please do give the video a like if you find there's something that you actually like about it, because it helps, as I've said before, with YouTube and all its funny bits and pieces that it does. And I'll see you in the next video.